Hello and welcome back to the Death by Tyranny podcast. I know you guys are wondering why I'm wearing a tie. Well, that's for a couple reasons. For one, I just wanted to try something different on the podcast. Maybe give you guys something a little better to look at. And also because I did a change on the YouTube channel. Instead of Griffith Media podcast, you can find me at Death by Tyranny podcast on youtube.com. So if you guys don't mind, you can go ahead and go over there and check it out and subscribe if you want. Hopefully you see some value in the podcast and will continue to follow us along. And with that, I want to get back to the great Biden divide. You know, I want to talk about the border crisis because, and I know that some people might be tired of hearing about the border crisis, but here's the thing: the social media is censoring the information about the border crisis. You're not going to see things about the border crisis in the mainstream news, and every time the president or someone from his cabinet is asked about it, it's always misleading. It's always misinformation, if you will. He has come out and said that the people in custody has been reduced by 90%. And there might be some truth to that, because thousands of people a day, thousands, are being moved all over the United States with help from the military, and I believe it's probably donors. I know some sources have come out and said that the Catholic Church has been donating to get some of these illegal immigrants over the border, and we have seen them everywhere from New York to Tennessee. I mean, and so these are where these illegal immigrants are going. And again, these are children. And most of these children probably aren't even making it to the border. I mean, this is truly what we should be talking about. This is what we should be putting all our resources to. We're the greatest country in the world, and yet we have a wide open border. And I promise you that illegal immigrants are not the only ones coming across those borders. You're going to have terrorists. You have fentanyl coming over the border by pounds. Well, probably more than pounds, but you get what I'm saying. And these drugs are making it to the inner city. They're making it to the gangs. And this is where you're seeing this gang violence and what the president would call gun violence skyrocketing. It's outrageous. If you're that worried about the gun violence in the inner city, it would probably be a good start to secure your fucking borders. And they can't even use the excuse that we're in a pandemic and the country's in debt and we just can't afford to do what needs to be done down at the border. That is not the case. There's only two cases that it could be. Either the Biden administration is just too incompetent to figure it out, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure it is quite complicated of a problem to get through, but they're not even headed in the right direction. And the other one is that they just don't care. They know this appeases their base because their base doesn't care about the safety in the inner cities. That's not what they care about. And the Democrats don't care about the safety in the inner city or our children. They only care about getting elected the next time they run for office. Now, where could we get some of this money to possibly help secure the border. Well, we just spent $2 million on the Capitol Police. And I know January 6th, yada, yada, yada. But why is the $2 million going to the Capitol Police, going to fund 2 new headquarters, one in California and one in Florida? What good is 2 headquarters on opposite sides of the United States going to do for the security of the Capitol? Why was the Capitol not secure in the first place? And moving on to another point, you had somewhere along the lines of 300,000 people at the Capitol that day, only 300 of those making it into the actual Capitol. We are the most armed population in the world, and of that population, the people at the Capitol were probably some of the most armed of that population. How is it that these people went and broke into the Capitol, committed this insurrection, yet there was no fucking guns brought into the Capitol? Now, and another aspect to the story is, why aren't we investigating the BLM riots that took place in front of the White House last year when Trump was in office, where they were setting fires to churches? The media came out and said it was only a day of peaceful protesting, when in all actuality, it was spread over the length of days. There were fires started, there were police injured, federal police. Why aren't we investigating that insurrection? They tried to break into the White House. It was an insurrection. You can look it up. There's videos all about this on YouTube, and you can't even say it happened, because the people that are most likely to say that that didn't even happen, I'm sure you remembered a meme going around last year about the White House cutting off the lights and using their little laser pointer things to maybe snipe some people in front of the White House. It happened. So why aren't we talking about that still? Why is it just about the Capitol on January 6th? I would think if you were so worried about insurrections, you would be worried about an insurrection at the White House. That seems like it would be maybe even a little bit more important than the Capitol building. You have AOC that came out and said that she was afraid for her life, and she was afraid she was going to get raped on national television, and the bitch wasn't even in the Capitol. Yet we have Biden almost every day talking about the spread of misinformation, and we need to censor the conservative voice, and that conservatives are just like the Confederates in the Civil War. Now that's a pretty harsh thing to compare conservatives to, if you ask me. I don't really think that was called for. But you want to talk about misinformation? Let's talk about misinformation. They say gun violence is going up, crime is going down, yet they're not prosecuting crimes other than gun violence. Well, of course, gun violence is going to go up and other crime is going to go down if you're not prosecuting that crime. You're not talking about the BLM riots, and you're talking about how bad January 6th is. When the BLM riots eclipse January 6th. And the threat to the United States, dollar for dollar, life for life. Why are we spreading the misinformation that January 6th was the worst thing to happen since the Civil War, when the BLM riots eclipse that? Why are we putting together a bipartisan committee to keep another dead-end investigation going? It's almost like they can't help but have an investigation going nonstop that is trying to get rid of Trump for good, or imprison him, or attack Trump supporters. I think that's what it is. Now, in this investigation, you're not going to hear about the truth. It's just going to be more witch hunt for Trump and maybe a little bit more prosecution of those 300 people that entered the Capitol. So, why aren't we asking Biden those questions? And when he is pressed a little bit, why is he spreading misinformation? Well, maybe it's because he's concerned with COVID and the pandemic and people getting the vaccination. Maybe he just wants to censor the conservatives that are spreading misinformation on social media. Oh, that can't be it, because the majority of the people that aren't getting the vaccination are actually minorities. And I know people in the inner city of Chicago aren't watching fucking Tucker Carlson. So if they're not watching these conservative outlets, why aren't they getting these COVID shots? Well, that's because there is COVID misinformation going around, but it's not coming from the conservative outlets. It's coming from the government. It's coming from the CDC itself. It's coming from the CDC flip-flopping on its policies and its guidelines. It's coming from Biden coming out and saying that people with the vaccine can't get COVID. That is a flat-out lie. That was never the case. I don't even think maybe more than a day or two went by after the vaccine was going around where people with the vaccine wasn't catching COVID. Furthermore, the director of the CDC comes out and says 1 in every 10 people with the vaccine will catch COVID. But if you go to the CDC website right now and look it up, the statistics do not match that. The statistics in the CDC right now say 1 in every 10,000 people that get the vaccine will catch COVID. Now that's a big difference. That is, 1,000 times bigger of a difference? So why isn't Biden being censored? Because he's the president of the United States? Well, we sure in the fuck didn't mind censoring President Trump when he was the president of the United States. Could it have something to do with President Trump was a Republican? More of that conservative voice that we're trying to shut out of the atmosphere? You guys are going to have to find your line in the sand. I know my line in the sand. And I've heard a lot of people say that a mandate to get the vaccine is their line in the sand. Other people say doing a vaccine registration will be their line in the sand. Well, I can tell you this. Any registration where the government is trying to put people on a list is not a good thing. In history, it has been proven time and time again that when the government wants to stretch their powers far past where they're supposed to have control over, it usually starts with a registration of some kind. And we damn sure know that the Biden administration is already trying to disarm us. He has come out and said not only does he want to ban these assault-style weapons, but now he has openly said that he wants to ban 9mm pistols. And we always knew that was the case. At least some of us did. The question is when are the rest of us going to wake up? When are we going to take a stand against this administration? It's only going to be harder now that we will never taste the carrot on the end of the stick, with the carrot being freedom and the stick being the pandemic, because it will never end. California is going back into lockdowns. And I bet you the people in Australia right now are really wish they would have kept their firearms, because they're being sealed into their homes. Nobody's allowed to work. There is no essential workers in Australia. Is that what you want here in the United States? Because that's what it's going to get to. Not just me, but many other people tried to tell you if you let them get a taste of this power, they were going to get power hungry and they were never going to let it go. Well, now here we are almost 2 years later into the pandemic, and they are not letting that power go. And it's going to be awfully hard for any of the people who want to speak up to gather and to protest peacefully, because we're all being watched. You put a post on Facebook about how Biden's the worst president there ever was, you're probably on a list. I've told you here on this podcast, the ATF is going through your social media. Believe that. Why Tucker Carlson was so surprised that the NSA unmasked his name and was spying on him beats me. A lot of us already knew this. They're watching the social medias. They want to censor and fact check your text messages. And they're not even trying to hide it. That's where we are in this administration. They are no longer trying to hide it. They are flat out saying they want to disarm you. And they want to censor your free speech. That is the First and the Second Amendment. And for all those people that say, well, we've amended amendments before. Yes, that is correct. But there is only one amendment that says do not infringe. And I'm pretty sure our forefathers meant in saying that not to fuck with the Second Amendment. But, I mean, we're just going to keep wearing those face diapers and going along and listening to what us good children are supposed to do for this administration. And it blows my mind. $2 billion to secure the Capitol from states away. The test that is most commonly used for COVID, the instant test, it can't even tell the difference between influenza and COVID. But you guys already knew that the numbers were being inflated. We were already being misled with more misinformation. It is funny how the Democrats and the left keep talking about things that the conservative and right side are doing, when in fact it's them that are doing it. There is a great professor that is on tape saying that if you tell a lie over and over again, eventually they will believe it. And that's what's happening right now. We are being fed the lie over and over again. And some of you do believe it. Now, I don't want to make this too long because Facebook can't really handle it. And I'm curious to see how long they're going to let me broadcast this podcast. That was a mouthful. On Facebook. I don't think it's going to be too much longer because we're going to start talking about things that are going to make people very uncomfortable. Because it has just come to that point. A religion, a race, none of those things should be suppressed. I know it's happened in the past, but it's not 1920. It's 2021. And we are all equal, whether you want to believe that or not. And if anything, what you're seeing that is unequal is slightly skewed from your point of view. There is an attack on the conservative ideal in America. And that it's just to the point where we have to stand up for ourselves. And I've told you, when people talk to you at work, out in public, and they spread lies, you just have to tell them to shut up and get away from you. And that's just where we're at. There isn't a whole lot of other ways we can do to fight it other than keep spreading the truth and sticking together. And we're having a hard time even sticking together. Us in the conservative movement have plenty of disagreements, but we have to set that aside. We have to stop pointing fingers and saying which side is the white nationalist. From what I can tell, a lot of these bigger followings in the conservative movement, none of them are white nationalist. There is some nationalists for sure, but I don't think there's a bad thing in having love for your country, having pride in the land that we protect and we grow and we aspire to be something more. Now, they throw the word white nationalist. Well, I mean, are you trying to just be racially inflammatory? Or what are you trying to do there by adding that word white in front of nationalist? Because I believe nationalism is good, and I'm white, so would that make me a white nationalist? You see what I'm getting at? They keep coming up with these words and these phrases to attack us like we're the bad guys, and we're not. I almost fear the day when my children are older and I'm not there to protect them, because if it's getting this bad now, I can only imagine. And if you guys keep voting Democrats, I promise you it won't turn around anytime soon. And I just don't know what else to do other than try to for you guys to see that we're not headed in a good direction. And putting Biden in office was probably the worst thing that we possibly could have done. But with that said, I'm going to wrap this one up. Got a little off track there at the end. I apologize. Stuff's a little frustrating to keep talking about the same things over and over again, because more and more comes out that they don't want to talk about. I sure would like to know what all we could have used that $2 billion for. I am going to try to do a couple more podcasts this week, and I apologize for the lack of podcasts this past week. Unfortunately, I don't really have too much of a following right now, and I had to work some overtime to take care of some other things at the house. But if you do watch and you do follow, I appreciate everything from you guys. Coming up this Tuesday, August 2nd, is my birthday. And if you want to do something special for me on my birthday, you can go to YouTube at Death by Tyranny Podcast and give me a subscribe, and I would really appreciate that. And you guys stay healthy and safe and keep fighting the good fight. See y'all later.